I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Dr. Anthony Fauci testified during a Senate Appropriations Committee hearing on Tuesday. Senator Roy Blunt asked Fauci whether vaccine development will be subjected to normal processes once the pandemic is over, despite the success of accelerated approvals. Let's listen in for his response.
Dr. Hodes, I've been watching the FDA decision on Aduhelm, the Biogen drug, as well as the CMS handling of that. I think that decision is going to have some pretty long-term consequences, particularly the CMS decision. And other companies will be following. Biogen's already made some pretty dramatic decisions based on the CMS view that only the people in the trial could benefit from the emergency approval by FDA. Would you talk a little bit about both of those things? First, the FDA approval process. What merit do you see in that emergency approval process? And then what concerns do you have or not have about CMS then deciding that it would only be available to a few people?
Thank you for the question. Well, of course, FDA and CMS have their regulatory responsibilities, and we defer to those, but we do work very closely, in particular on the science involved in its implications. So as many or all of you may know, the decision by FDA was what was called an accelerated approval of aducanumab, Aduhelm, based on its ability to clear amyloid from the brain and by brain scans without a compelling evidence of clinical effectiveness. And that was the rub. And in fact, the FDA decision required that the sponsors, Biogen, Eisai, then conduct a randomized controlled trial to determine if there was, in fact, clinical outcome. It was in that setting that CMS said that for widespread coverage, it would require randomized controlled clinical trial. It made the distinction, though, about the future of such drugs. Any drug that received an approval based on clinical outcome, based on FDA decision and judgment, would have broader coverage without requirement for another randomized clinical trial. But any in which there was no demonstrated evidence of effectiveness on clinical outcomes would require that kind of outcome before they went further. Again, those are regulatory decisions.
So it sounds like to me the FDA decision was really, as CMS saw it, at least just a decision to continue the trial. That may not have been what FDA thought it was doing, but that's what CMS decided it was doing.
Well, FDA, again, by requiring that for maintenance, even of the accelerated approval, that a clinical trial, randomized trial, be carried out, was also saying there needed to be a continuation. You ask importantly, I think, what the impact of this will be on other studies, other agents. There are currently 3 companies, Roche, Lilly, and Eisai Biogen, which have ongoing clinical trials of other antibodies to amyloid. They've all received a breakthrough designation last year from the FDA. They're all expected to produce their results in the next few months. So above all, I think we all share hope and optimism that we'll see effective clinical outcomes there. For NIH, I think the implications are clear. We need to support the most rigorous and continued research toward amyloid and other targets, the kind of research that will give clear-cut, definitive answers about clinically important outcomes. And that's certainly our part in this consortium.
Well, Dr. Fauci, while we're talking about accelerated approvals or not, during COVID, obviously NIAIDs shepherded both successful vaccines and therapeutics through the approval process during the pandemic. I'm concerned that once the pandemic is officially behind us, that both vaccine and therapeutic research and development will be subjected to normal development processes that, in what we've learned in the last year and a half, may not be the structure that we should use. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Senator, are you referring to the fact that we should not slow down the acceleration of approvals when we're out of the pandemic phase?
I'm asking if that, or if there should be some new normal approval process that now that we've had, I think, 2 vaccines and 20 treatments developed through those partnerships.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question. It's my fault. Are you saying that should we continue the normal standard of approval, which would take much longer than the emergency use authorization? Is that the question you're
That's
asking?
the question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should go through the normal approvals. And if we're in an emergency situation, again, we absolutely should use the EUA approach, which has fared us very well. But when we get behind us the outbreak, I think the normal approval process, which is pretty much expedited pretty well by the FDA, should continue.
All right. Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam